It was supposed to be just another routine evening and after hours workout at the gym to help me blow off some steam. But what happened that night is something I'll never be able to forget. I can still feel the cold air and hear the echoes of my footsteps in that empty gym. The sense of isolation, the whispering shadows, and the feeling that something unseen was watching me, it all happened so quickly, and yet it felt like an eternity. It changed me in ways I can't explain. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe it was just a series of coincidences. But deep down, I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know what I felt. That night at Ironclad Gym, something was waiting for me. Today we're diving deeper into the realm of real life horror. We'll be sharing more chilling tales based on true events. Before we begin, for our appreciation and encouragement of our hard work, please hit that like button and subscribe to support our channel. We're always on the lookout for new, terrifying stories. If you have a bone chilling experience to share, please reach out. Your story might be featured in a future episode. My name is Sophie Daniels. I'm in my mid 20s, and for as long as I can remember, I've been an early riser. I've always loved working out. There's something therapeutic about the rhythmic pounding of the treadmill, the clanking of weights, and the sweat that flows with every push of effort. After a long day at work, I could never quite shake the need to move. So after my 9 to 5 job at a law firm, I would make my way to Ironclad Gym, a small, no frills place just a few blocks from my apartment. The gym was pretty typical: bright overhead lights, a few worn out mats, and rows of dumbbells and machines. Ironclad was always quieter at night, mostly populated by a few dedicated regulars like me. I liked it that way. It felt peaceful, almost meditative, compared to the chaos of peak hours. The staff would often lock up and head out by 9:30 p.m., but I always stayed until close to 11, taking my time to work through my routine. That night, it was just me and the sound of my shoes on the gym floor. I remember glancing up at the clock as I finished my sets of deadlifts 10:45 p.m. A few more minutes, and I would head home to get some sleep before another day of work. But then, something strange happened. I had just finished my final rep on the leg press machine when I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The gym felt unusually still, the silence thick and almost oppressive. I shrugged it off, assuming it was just the endorphins kicking in, making me a little more sensitive to my surroundings. I wiped my face with a towel and started putting away the weights, ready to head out. But as I walked toward the locker room, I noticed something odd. The door to the gym, normally left propped open for ventilation, was now completely shut. I frowned. I didn't recall hearing anyone leaving. But that was odd in itself, because the place was usually deserted by 9:30. I approached the door and tried to push it open, but it wouldn't budge. That's when I realized I was locked in. At first, I thought it was just some strange oversight. Maybe the staff had locked the door without realizing anyone was still inside. I went to the front desk, expecting to find someone, but the space was empty. The gym felt different now, more oppressive, as if it were holding its breath. I tried calling the emergency number posted on the wall, but the phone line was dead. It was almost as though the building was alive and it didn't want me to leave. I checked my phone, no service. Panic began to claw at the edges of my mind. I paced around, trying every door and window. Everything was locked tight. I was about to give up and sit on one of the benches to wait for someone to realize I was missing when I heard a soft sound, a faint scraping noise coming from the back of the gym, near the locker room. At first, I thought it was just the air conditioning kicking in, or maybe something had fallen. But the sound grew louder, more deliberate. The gym was dark at this point, save for the dim overhead lights that buzzed and flickered. I hesitated but eventually walked toward the sound, my footsteps echoing on the hard floors. As I neared the locker room, I stopped dead in my tracks. The air felt colder, a sudden drop in temperature that didn't make sense for an indoor space. It was as if the room had been sealed off from the rest of the building. My breath came out in visible puffs, and I rubbed my arms, trying to chase away the chill. I peered around the corner, and that's when I saw it. The locker room door was ajar, though I was sure it had been closed when I first passed by. I crept closer, heart hammering in my chest. I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The lights in the locker room were flickering, casting strange, dancing shadows across the walls. The benches were empty, and the lockers old and creaky lined the room in neat rows. But then, as my eyes scanned the room, I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the lockers was slowly opening. It wasn't the usual squeal of metal scraping against metal. It was too smooth, too deliberate. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was my mind playing tricks on me. But as I took a step forward, the locker door creaked open wider, just a few inches at first, then halfway, until it stopped. A low, guttural sound began to rise from within it. I froze. It wasn't a sound I could describe, part growl, part whisper. But it wasn't human. I couldn't move. My legs felt like lead. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to convince myself it was just a prank, maybe some leftover machinery from the gym's maintenance crew or a rodent, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The air was thick now, heavy with a strange presence, and my entire body screamed at me to run. Suddenly, the locker slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the sound stopped. I staggered back, hitting the wall behind me for support. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could barely catch my breath. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of the locker room mirror, just behind me, I saw a figure, a tall, thin shadow standing motionless in the far corner of the room. My pulse spiked, and I whipped around, but there was nothing there. Only the dim, flickering light. I wasn't alone. I rushed out of the locker room, my mind racing as I desperately searched for any escape. My phone was still useless, no service, no way to contact anyone. I ran back toward the front desk, hoping the gym doors would somehow open, but they remained locked tight. That's when I heard it again, the scraping sound, closer this time. I turned slowly, feeling the blood drain from my face as I saw the movement. No, the presence coming toward me. It was a figure, but not a person. It had no face, no details, just a tall, slender shape moving unnaturally across the gym floor. Its movements were jerky, like it was walking but also sliding, its long limbs stretching out unnaturally with each step. It was the figure in the mirror, the thing I had seen just moments before. I wanted to scream, but my throat was too tight. I turned and ran down the nearest hallway, my feet slipping on the polished floor. I found myself in the back storage room, the only place left where I could hide. I locked the door behind me, trying to steady my breathing. The room smelled of old towels and cleaning supplies, but it didn't comfort me. The sound of my heartbeat in my ears drowned out everything else. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could wait it out. The gym staff would come back in the morning, they would find me, and this nightmare would end. But then I heard something I'll never forget. A voice, soft at first, but growing louder. Help. Me. It was coming from the other side of the door. I froze. It was a voice, but not just any voice. It was cold, distorted, like it was being filtered through water, and it was begging. I held my breath, trying to ignore the fact that the voice was getting closer. It was behind the door now. I slowly turned around, hoping there was some other way out of the room. That's when I saw the shadows in the corners of the storage room were shifting, twisting, becoming something else, something darker. I wasn't alone anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. The terror was too much. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I lunged for the window, tearing through the broken blinds, trying to pry it open. It gave way with a snap, and I scrambled through it, tumbling into the cold night air below. I didn't care that I was hurt. I didn't care about anything except getting away from that gym. The moment I hit the pavement, I ran through the dark streets, my body screaming from the effort, but I couldn't stop. I had to get away. I didn't look back. I've never been back to Ironclad Gym. I don't even drive past it anymore. It's as though that place was erased from my life. But the memories are there, haunting me. The scraping sounds, the figures, the voices. They follow me in the quiet moments, in the shadows. I've since moved out of my apartment, though I can't escape the nightmares. I've told a few friends, but they just laugh it off, chalk it up to stress or my imagination running wild. They didn't hear what I heard. They didn't see what I saw. I don't know if the gym is haunted. I don't know if I was just losing my mind that night. But I do know one thing: there's something in that gym, something ancient, something dark. And I'm glad I escaped before it decided to claim me. But I don't think I'll ever truly be free of it. Because sometimes, in the still of the night, I hear that voice again. Help me. And I know it's calling me. I don't think I'll ever go to a gym after dark again. I can still feel it, the oppressive stillness, the unnatural silence. It all happened one night when I thought I was just getting in a late night workout after a long day. I was a regular at my gym, always the last one to leave. I'd head there around 10 p.m., when the place was practically deserted. I liked the solitude, it was the perfect time to zone out and clear my mind. But that night, it changed everything. My name's Alex Turner, and I'm 28 years old. I've always been into fitness, lifting, cardio, all of it. For the past few months, I'd been hitting the gym hard after work. My job at the marketing firm wasn't the most physically demanding, so the gym was where I went to release the stress. It helped clear my head, burn off the frustrations of corporate life. My gym, Iron Core, was a small 24-hour place tucked in a quiet corner of town. It wasn't the biggest or the flashiest gym, but it had everything I needed: free weights, cardio machines, and a few squat racks. It was never packed at night, which is why I loved it. There were a few regulars who came in late, but most of them were either winding down or finishing up when I arrived. That particular night, I was later than usual. I had a deadline at work, and the day had dragged on longer than expected. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, the gym was completely empty. I could see my reflection in the large front windows, tired but determined. I hadn't planned to stay too long. Just a quick hour or so of lifting, a little time on the treadmill, and then home to shower and sleep. I walked through the front door, the familiar hum of the fluorescent lights above greeting me. It was a bit colder than usual, the chill of the AC cutting through the air, but nothing too unusual. The front desk was unmanned, and the gym was dark aside from the overhead lights and the faint glow of the TV monitors on the cardio machines. I glanced at the clock. It was already 11:45 p.m. I made my way to the locker room, grabbed my gym bag, and set about changing into my workout clothes. There was something about the gym at night, the quiet, the solitude that I found oddly comforting. Most of the machines were free, and the only sound was the occasional shuffle of my own feet and the clink of weights. I started with the free weight section. The dumbbells were lined up neatly on their racks, and the squat rack stood waiting for me to claim it. I was working through my routine deadlifts, squats, bench press. It was a solid session, but something felt off. Not in a way I could explain. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was just the lateness of the hour. Either way, I pushed it to the back of my mind and focused on my reps. That's when I first noticed the sound. It started as a faint noise, a soft scratching sound coming from the far corner of the gym near the storage room. I assumed it was just the air conditioning unit kicking on, or maybe something falling off a shelf. But then it happened again, this time louder, a distinct scrape, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I paused mid rep and looked over. The gym was empty, aside from me. I'd been alone since I arrived. I glanced at the clock again, 12:15 a.m. It was late, and my mind was starting to wander, so I shook it off. Maybe it was just the building settling. Iron core was old, after all. It had been around for years. Still, I felt a twinge of unease in my gut, something that made me look over my shoulder a little more often than usual. I continued my workout, focusing on the weights in my hands. As I pressed the barbell back onto the rack, I heard it again. This time it was closer. A loud, dragging sound that seemed to echo across the gym. I froze. I, it wasn't the AC. It wasn't anything normal. I quickly looked toward the source of the noise, but the gym was still empty. Nothing. No one was there. I shook my head, trying to calm myself. Maybe it was just the wind or some strange noise from the old pipes. I had heard weirder things in old buildings. But the scratching continued. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was coming from the back corner again, the storage room where they kept extra equipment and cleaning supplies. The door was slightly ajar. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed to be the source of the sound. I stood there for a moment, debating whether to investigate. I figured I'd just peek around the corner, see if something had fallen over. Maybe a piece of equipment had shifted out of place. I grabbed my gym towel and wiped the sweat from my brow. I couldn't let my imagination get the best of me. I walked toward the back corner, my footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent gym. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but as I approached the storage room, the door creaked open just a little more, as if it were inviting me inside. I hesitated. I'm not someone who scares easily, but something about the door, the sound, the way the air around me seemed colder. It was starting to feel wrong. I leaned in a little closer, my heart pounding in my chest. There was something moving in the storage room, something subtle, but it was definitely there. The scraping had stopped, replaced by an odd, rhythmic thumping. It almost sounded like breathing. Then the door suddenly slammed shut. I jumped back, adrenaline surging through my body. My heart was pounding in my ears, and the gym, once so familiar and comforting, now felt foreign and unsettling. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the door. That's when I heard a soft, low laugh, a laugh that didn't belong to anyone in the gym. I backed away from the door, my chest tightening. I couldn't move. I felt the overwhelming sensation that I wasn't alone anymore. Something was with me, something unseen. My eyes darted around the gym, scanning every corner, every shadow. The lights above flickered once, then again, casting the gym into a strobe like effect. For a moment, the entire place looked warped, as if the walls themselves were breathing. I took a step backward, my body reacting before my mind could process what was happening. I turned to leave, but as I glanced over my shoulder, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure in the mirror. It was only a shadow, at first faint, barely visible, but it was there. A dark shape standing in the reflection, just behind me. It was tall and thin, its outline jagged and uneven. Its face, if you could call it a face, was an abyss of darkness, featureless, but I could feel its presence pressing into me like a weight on my chest. I spun around, heart in my throat, but there was nothing behind me. The gym was still empty. The sound of my breathing was loud in my ears, and the silence that followed was deafening. I started to back away, but the feeling of being watched intensified. The hairs on my neck stood on end, and I knew I wasn't alone. The gym felt suffocating, the air thick with something heavy, something oppressive. I needed to leave. I had to get out. My body was in full fight or flight mode. I sprinted toward the exit, my shoes slapping against the floor, but when I reached the door, it wouldn't open. I tugged at the handle frantically, but it wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, desperation creeping into my thoughts. What was happening? Why was I locked in? That's when I heard the footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. I turned, and that's when I saw the figure from the mirror, standing in the doorway of the storage room. It was taller now, looming over me, its long limbs stretching unnaturally. The shadows around it twisted and writhed, almost alive, as if they were feeding off the darkness. Its face still featureless, just a black void stared at me with a silent, unblinking gaze. I could feel its eyes, though non existent, boring into me. Get out, the voice came from nowhere and everywhere, whispering through my head. It was soft, but insistent. Get out. I ran. I don't remember how or when, but somehow I found myself outside, gasping for air. The gym door finally swung open as I pulled on it one last time. I looked over my shoulder, but the gym was still, the windows dark. I was out of breath, drenched in sweat, and trembling. The figure was gone. But I'll never forget the voice. I'll never forget the feeling of being watched. I don't go to Iron Core anymore. In fact, I don't go to any gym late at night. The fear, the unknown, has stayed with me. I've told a few friends what happened that night, but they just dismiss it as stress or my imagination running wild. But I know what I saw, what I felt. Iron Core is still open, still operating, but I can't shake the feeling that something's waiting for anyone who dares to step inside when the lights go down. And I'm not sure if I ever want to find out what that something is.